Today we have the 3 best premium tanks that you can purchase in World of Tanks console that will earn you tons of silver, and we're going to go into each singular one of them. We've combined 3 videos into one so that you get the whole overview of the entire Crimson tanks. They feature a 75% silver bonus, and there'll be a review of each of the vehicles so you guys know what they are all about. And if they ever come up on sale in the near future, or maybe later on down the line, and you want to figure out what they are, or maybe you want to take them out on the battlefield because they are very competitive vehicles, well, you'll know everything about them, and of course be able to earn tons of silver playing in World War II mode and not having to rely on, of course, the Cold War mode to technically make a lot of silver if you want to play World War II. But either way, let's get into the video and start off with the Ragnarok T34-100. This is by far one of the best premium tanks in World of Tanks, and it's not only because this tank is insanely good at doing what it does, but it's also the fact that it is genuinely one of the best ways of earning silver, which is the whole point in having a premium tank in the game right now. Or at least that's what the premise was when premium tanks were first released, to earn you a bit of silver so that you can grind through some of the tech trees a little bit faster and not have to be kind of kept at that kind of lock state where, you know, you're having to earn a ton of silver to be able to progress to the next tank. And yeah, this tank certainly does that very well, and it's part of one of the best bundles that is released at the moment. And the whole point in showcasing this tank is that it is part of one of those bundles. Now, we are playing, of course, the Ragnarok. This is the Czechoslovakian medium tank that has, of course, a 3-shot autoloader, and is a pretty devastating one as you're able to rack up a lot of damage with every single shell. And yeah, you've got 3 of them. So the good thing about the Ragnarok in comparison to a lot of the other mediums and mediums that may have an autoloader is that it reloads pretty quickly, allowing you about a 23-second reload to be able to deal just over 900 damage in your entire clip, which is really nice because heavy tanks can basically not outtrade you provided that you aim fully and you're aiming at all of the weak points of the tanks that you're going to be shooting. And yeah, you can quickly rack up a ton of damage, and you can see there we're up to 1500 damage within the first minute and 45 seconds. So a really nice start to the game. And of course the main reason in showcasing this is it is available in the store right now, and it's actually part of one of the best bundles available to everyone in World of Tanks if you're after some amazing premium tanks that actually earn you silver as well, and that you don't have to purely fire premium rounds and stuff like that and end up losing a lot of credits to having to fire those premium rounds. And I don't mean that you're going to lose credits in the tank, I just mean that you'll lose out on being able to deal to get the maximal amount of credits that you can get in the game. But the Ragnarok, why is it such a good tank? And that is because the Crimson vehicles, which is the set of vehicles that this is included with, which includes the Hydra IS-6, which is a video we'll be doing very shortly, and you'll see that on the channel as well in the upcoming day or so. And of course it comes with the Minotaur KV5, one of my kind of I loved the Minotaur KV5. It's basically an upgraded version of the KV5. I mean, that pretty much tells you all you need to know. And so yeah, very solid vehicle indeed. But in this game you can see, of course, we are taking on the aggressive approach as you want to do when you have a tank like this. We finish off the low health targets because we don't want to get hit for twice in case our teammate gets taken out, etc. So we're just now waiting for us to reload. No point in poking and being available for opponents to hit you when you're on your reload, or you know, that's just general good advice, to be honest with you, when it comes to playing World of Tanks. Don't, you know, poke out if you're not actually reloaded, because you're not going to do anything unless, of course, you're trying to spot for your team. Now, obviously this game's been very quick. It's been, what, 3.5 minutes. We're up to nearly 3000 damage and 700 assistance, and this is often the game you'll have when you're in such a powerful vehicle. And not only that, it gets really good view range. So you can spot opponents, you can get a bit of assistance. Obviously, because you're an autoloader, you can track opponents, which is an amazing way to not only get damage for yourself because you've tracked them in place and they can't move and you can hit their weak points easier, but also because you can then lock them in place for your teammates to hit, which is another reason to do it. Now you can see me here going for the Lurver in the side. I mean, we've got premium rounds here just so that we can guarantee pens, etc. I didn't know if he was going to look at me, but obviously Lurver turns towards me, but I'm not really going to go for the Lurver anymore. He's not going to last long enough for me to sit here and wait, so we're going to go for more of the damage. If we can get a shot onto the Lurver as we go up the hill, then maybe we'd recommend it, but yeah, he's yet again taken another big hit and then he's out of this game real quick. So we now make our way up the hill, obviously dealing 3,849 damage with some assistance is a great way of being able to earn silver. The better the game you have and the better the tank you're playing when you're playing in a premium, the more silver you're more likely to be able to get, because of course silver and doing well in a vehicle are basically correlated. So the better you do, the more silver you earn, provided that you haven't just fully spam premium the entire game, and even then you can often earn more silver doing that than you will if you don't fire any. But you can see here, just going for some free damage on this little T32, picking up a full extra clip leading up to nearly 5,000 damage, 4,780 if we're being precise, and of course a victory. But how much silver did we actually earn in the best premium tank that I'm trying to showcase? Well, yeah, it was quite a bit, and we are running with 2x silver bonuses, so the values you're seeing here are boosted, but 346,000 silver in this game. We are not playing on Cold War. There were no additional operations going on at this time to earn more silver. This is just how much silver we earn from the tank and having a very, very good game, but still, that is how much you can earn at the top level, and almost every single game that you play, when you're running it even without the ×2 silver boosters, you're probably in the region of about 90 to 110,000 silver in your games, dependent on premium ammunition and your premium consumables. But either way, let's jump into the next one because that's not it for today. And so we jump into Pearl River. Pearl River, obviously a very, very good map for when you have an autoloader. I absolutely love playing this vehicle, not only because you know, you have the autoloader, you've got the good damage potential, the silver earn, but because of the mobility, and it feels just very flexible. It is very, very competitive. It is a very strong tier 8 medium tank, and in fact probably one of the top elite level premiums that you can get in the game. And I wanted to showcase it to you guys because there's often this thing about, you know, wanting to get the brand new tanks that come into the game, but sometimes the old ones are actually the best. And in the case of the Crimson tanks, I highly recommend at least giving them thought when you're thinking about spending money on the game, if you're going to spend any money at all. Obviously, I don't want to promote you spending money that you don't have or anything like that, but if you are going to spend money, this is the best bundle that you can pick up in the store right now, the Crimson tank bundle, in terms of having very good competitive tanks and with the great silver. And so I just want to highlight that to you guys, for those of you wondering. But yeah, with that out of the way, we can focus on the gameplay portion now and how you can do it as well, how you can perform well as well. So in this game, obviously we've pushed into the middle pretty quickly. The mobility of the Ragnarok allows us to do that. Could there have been another tank that also came up here? Absolutely, but that's where you got to evaluate on a case-by-case basis. But we find ourselves a little cruncher who's pushed in. I'm not going to push in with just one shell if he's aiming at me because I don't want to trade 1-for-1 with him, but we will go for the tracking and actual damage against him. So there you go, free 200 damage from assistance, and of course an extra shot of damage as well. So this is what I mean by just playing it smart when it comes to the Ragnarok. We don't want to lose any health at the beginning. The tank has no armor. It has absolutely no armor. It can bounce rounds, but at the end of the day, it's a T34-100, which is the Czechoslovakian tier 7 kind of armor. So you're not really going to bounce anything. The only tanks you'll really bounce are vehicles like, for example, tier 6s. Stuff like that may bounce when it's angled at a ridiculous angle. But tier 8s, tier 9s, and tier 10s, which you can meet in this tank, will go through you every single day of the week. So just try avoid getting hit in all regards, and definitely make sure to put cover in between you and your opponents every time you can. And that's exactly what we did here. Now we find ourselves an auto-loading check kind of heavy tank there, but obviously we can take one hit. I want to get him out the game. When he's out the game, we can kind of play a little bit more how we want, and we're not kind of you know, having to deal with maybe he gets hold down on a corner, stops us from playing in a position. So taking the hit is sometimes the best thing to do just to finish off a tank. And given the fact that the TNH has just died to me, I don't know why the prop thought that he would be completely different. As he now comes around the corner, we go for one on the side of his tank, and we're not going to try and get the third one off here because we probably would have taken a hit and it wouldn't have been worth it. We're not going to finish him off anyway, so we're going to take that full reload. And that's often where you see people go wrong when they do play autoloaders. They get a little bit greedy, and I do it myself as well all of the time. And this is often the reason why you get taken out. It's because you play greedy, you want to get that extra shot, and you end up taking 3 shots in return, even when you could have just taken none and dealt your 2 shots of damage. So just be very careful when you do push up. Now we find ourselves a little prop, we could take a shot here, and we do. Since we've taken the shot, we might as well just sit here and get as much damage as we can. So that's fine. He low rolled us anyway, which is fine as well. So with that being said, 3,662 damage. This is how quickly and easily this tank can rack up damage, and it really doesn't feel any easier when you know, when you're playing in a tier 8 like this does. And so yeah, I really enjoy this tank. And here you go, a Lorraine trying to escape. The APCR rounds here coming in very powerfully because of the fact that you can track opponents really quickly from range, but you can also, you know, deal damage and stuff like that pretty easily at range because you don't have to kind of lead your shells, which is one of the biggest things as well. So another really quick game, picking up nearly 4,500 damage and also getting a ton of assistance as well, meaning that we nearly got 2,000 base XP. And these were games consecutively, basically one after the other. And so yeah, you can see how powerful this tank is, picking up 367,000 silver for our efforts in that 4-minute game. So yeah, it is absolutely one of the best tanks for earning you silver, and will be one of the nicest things that you can play in the game. Hopefully that showcases the Ragnarok T34-100, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Make sure that you check it out, and of course if you're wondering whether or not you're kind of hesitating as to whether or not to get the bundle, if you are going to spend money, then check out tomorrow's video where we look at the Hydra IS-6, which is another tank in that bundle as well. Welcome back to one of the better premium tanks in World of Tanks. We are looking at the Hydra IS-6. This is another Crimson vehicle that we've had in the store recently, and is once again, much like the Ragnarok T34-100, which was yesterday's video, is on sale as well. So you can pick these tanks up, which is pretty good. And there are 3 different vehicles that you can pick up. Now you can either buy them at a discount per tank, or you can buy them all together for a bigger discount. But of course that's down to your own personal kind of monetary position, whether you can actually spend the money. Maybe you just want to find out how to take these things out. We're going to cover all of that in today's video. And of course you can find them in the World War II tanks in the store section. So we have, of course, the Ragnarok T34, which was 6,650. The Hydra IS-6, which is today's video, is 8,000 gold. So it's slightly more expensive, but of course that's down to the fact that it's a heavy tank and has a much higher base gold cost to actually purchase. But if you consider that some of the other vehicles that are released recently, like the AVRE, that costs 16,000 gold, you can pick up multiple tanks for basically, the same price as some of the more expensive ones that they've been going around doing. But either way, jumping into what we have available then, the Hydra IS-6 is essentially a IS-6 that gets a much better bonus to the silver amount that you can pick up in the game. Now, most tanks in this category of premium tank will have a 50% bonus. For example, the IS-6, which is its closest competitor, is the same basic vehicle, except there are a few differences. We'll get into those as we go through. But 150% silver bonus compared to the 175% silver bonus makes this one of the best ways of grinding credits if you don't want to have to play a mode that maybe you don't like Cold War, for example. And of course, a lot of people are saying, yeah, you can just jump into Cold War, earn a load of silver, but at the end of the day, when it comes to earning silver in World War II, playing the game mode that maybe you like the most, then these tanks are the best ones to do that for. And I highly recommend doing that. So straight off the bat, 175% silver bonus makes this one of the best ones, and then you come into the fact of all of the other categories of its statistics. It gets 6 degrees gun depression, which for a heavy tank from the Soviet line isn't terrible. It's workable, you can use a lot of positions, it's not too bad. I don't really find it a massive limiting factor. The great thing about the Hydra IS-6 is that it gets 440 alpha damage, putting it in line with things like the Defender. And what's even better is that the accuracy, although not great as the base value, 0.45, can be usable when it comes to later on down the line because of the fact you can use equipment and stuff like that to improve this significantly. And as soon as you put a commander in there with the perks that you need, this will get significantly better as well. So we can drop a commander in here just to showcase exactly what that value will go down to when you're thinking of the maximum. So 0.38, which is fine. You may miss a few shots, but accuracy in these sorts of tanks, not really a problem because you're usually quite close to opponents that you'll be fighting. So either way, 2,429 damage per minute on this tank is very, very workable. You can use it quite easily, and because you're dealing a lot of damage in every single one of your shots, it is very comfortable to be able to do, you know, 2,000, 3,000 damage in a game. It doesn't take a whole lot, provided you've got a little bit of experience. If you're a newer player, this tank is equally not that bad because you've got that relatively high alpha, so you can kind of get away with a bit. And the armor model does work sometimes if you're playing in tier 8 games. However, the Hydra IS-6 is a tank that isn't like the normal IS-6. And why is that? Well, the IS-6 standard version only goes up to tier 9. It's a preferential matchmaking vehicle, which means that when you load into the game, you're only going to be able to see either tier 8 vehicles or tier 9 vehicles. You can see obviously 2 tiers lower than you, so you can come into tier 6 games, but you will never go up to the +2, -2 matchmaking. It will be +1, -2 matchmaking for the preferential ones, and that's primarily down to the penetration values that the standard IS-6 gets, 175 and 217 on its premium rounds, basically meaning that if you want to play the standard IS-6, you have to fire full premium. But this is the Hydra IS-6. This one gets a much better gun. You have 440 alpha, like we've said, and alongside that you get increased penetration values. The standard round pen is 225, which is fine, and then as soon as you start loading premium ammunition with 265 pen, you are at kind of a tier 10 medium style standard round penetration. So you can deal with a lot of tanks that you'll face. So even in tier 10 games, you feel competitive. And when you're playing in tier 8, you can basically pen everything that you'll see. So it's really, really nice to have that functionality of being able to use those higher penetration rounds, both the standard and premium. Now we can load full premium in this because of the fact that it does get the 75% silver bonus, and with all of the other boosts that you can use, it can be a great advantage to do better in your games and not have to bounce any rounds. Am I saying you need to run full premium? Absolutely not. I would highly recommend having maybe 10 AP rounds and then 25 APCR, because when you do get into tier 9 and tier 10 games, 225 pen can be on the lower side, and you can often end up bouncing rounds that you could have just penned if you'd loaded premium. So in those games, you're going to need primarily mostly premium to make this tank work. HE rounds, we've got 2 in there. That's just for if you come up against light tanks, Waffle Panzer 4s, Borsigs, you know, the tier 10 Waffle, any of those lightly armored vehicles, anything like that. HE rounds are very, very nice because they boost your damage by about 90, which means you deal 530 damage in one shell, which is nice to have as in a little bit of an extra kind of thing for if you find those weakly armored vehicles. Of course, then we're running it with vertical stabilizers. This is for the improved accuracy when we're moving and using and turning the turret. Almost a must on this tank just to make the accuracy that much better. And considering how fast this vehicle is, it can go up to 38 kilometers an hour, so that, you know, when you are actually moving at that top speed, you can actually hit people and you don't have to have that huge bloom like you'll see if you don't have gun stabilizer on the vehicle. So highly recommend that. primarily make sure you've got this on if you are playing it. Advanced loader, minus 10% loading time, very, very important for improving your damage per minute, which is one of the biggest things for a tank like this where you want to be brawling, etc., and almost a must on every tank that I play. And then we've got advanced optics, which give you 10% more view range. That's just to spot anything that might be hiding in the bushes, whatever, and just make it a little bit easier to find opponents. Of course, dependent on your skill level, maybe you won't make use of this, and it might be worth having the improved speed, or maybe it would be worth having improved ventilation. It's kind of dependent on how well you know how to play heavy tanks, that sort of stuff, and maybe for newer players, ventilation or having this speed might be a little bit better, but for me, being able to find out where opponents are that hit me in that 10% view range increase means that it has 448 meters of view range, which is over maximum, and so yeah, we can basically be able to spot a lot of opponents that fire at us when they are relatively close, or if where they may have actually been hidden, we now spot them, which means I can actually hit them and deal damage, whereas you wouldn't be able to if you didn't have the optics, and therefore you miss out on damage. Maybe you take extra hits, maybe you have no idea where they are, etc. It's just nice to have that. And I highly recommend running that on a lot of heavy tanks, primarily because the meta in World War II is slightly different to what you typically think for a heavy tank. And yeah, that's kind of my opinion on that. It is more of a assistance damage and being able to find out where people are, as opposed to a flat kind of boost to your stats of the vehicle, which is kind of nice to have. And especially when you're going for 3 marks, it's nice to have that extra view range. Yeah, so that's kind of how I would run the tank, but highly recommend if you want to swap out the loadout, you get rid of advanced optics and go for something else. But yeah, it's just in there as kind of my preferred playstyle of using a heavy, as I am typically one of the furthest forward, so I'll end up getting spotting damage alongside actual damage if I can. Then we're running well, not full premium consumables, but large repair kit to repair everything and be able to use it multiple times in a battle. We're using the small med kit because, I mean, it's very rare you lose multiple crew members in the game, but if I wanted to min-max it, I would 100% take the enhanced med kit because it does have a unlimited use. And then of course enhanced rations, which is a must on every single tank in World War II. It is genuinely one of the best things you could possibly use. It's just a 15% better crew performance, which is massive. And then when that's when you actually activate it, and then the passive boost is that you just get 10% more commander XP and 10% better crew performance. So total, you'll end up getting 25% better crew performance when you activate it, and it lasts for 30 seconds. So it's really good. It will make your view range go further. It will make your reload go down, which means you're faster at firing. It means that your track repair speed is quicker. It just basically means everything about your tank gets better. Accuracy gets better. It is genuinely the one thing that I think everyone should use, regardless of if you don't have a premium tank. Always use enhanced rations. It is the biggest advantage to your tank, apart from maybe upgrading a stock vehicle to the top vehicle or packages. Yeah, that is kind of how we're running this vehicle, and I guess I wanted to delve into that in this video since it is kind of critical to how we play the Hydra IS-6. So with that being said, I think it's now time to jump into some gameplay to see how this tank actually works. Make sure that when you are playing this tank that you do use camo, even though it doesn't have camouflage that you can use on it because it's skinned, I guess. It is one where you have to purchase the camo for the additional 2% camouflage bonus, which I'd highly recommend doing, especially if you're playing it right now, because it is, of course, a 50% discount. But further on down the line, if you're watching this, it might not be. But yeah, that's something I would always recommend. Let's jump into the gameplay now to see exactly what this tank can do, and I'll see you there. And so here we go, Teakval Ridge in the Hydra IS-6. Probably a fairly decent map. We are in a tier 8 game, mainly I guess at the moment, because a lot of people are using premium tanks that they maybe have purchased on the discounts, etc. So probably more likely right now to get into tier 8, tier 9 games than you are in tier 10, since there's no bonus events, which do affect the matchmaker somewhat when they do release kind of you know, silver events, that sort of stuff. But either way,
we are going to be trying to make this one work, hopefully, fingers crossed, because the Hydra IS-6, it doesn't get the most amount of gun depression. We said it has 6 degrees, which is absolutely fine for most situations. You can use it on every single map and find good positions to use it in, but it is not the most flexible when it comes to super hilly maps like Teepval Ridge, where you can maybe get hulled down, and a lot of other vehicles, things like the Carnarvon, that sort of tanks, and heavy tanks I'm talking about in particular. They can use the gun depression of 10 degrees typically that they get to be able to kind of use the ridge lines a bit more effectively, and they don't have to crest over the ridges to make it work. But with the Hydra IS-6, you've got to find positions to counter that. Now, the armor model of this vehicle is questionable to say the least. I mean, in tier 10 games, you will get penned by almost everything going through your upper plate. In tier 8 games, people do bounce off of you, especially tier 7s and tier 6s if they fire at the upper plate. The turret is relatively decent, but the top of the turret is really quite weak, so you can actually pen above the tank, which is really nice to know. If you're coming up against one of these things, you can pen it above the mantlet on the top of the vehicle because it's kind of sloped a little bit. And of course it gets 2 cupolas that you can see quite easily right now that you can pen as well. So that's something you can do if you're interested in kind of taking these things out. Now, it does get a kind of weird kind of frontal armor. It gets like angled plates, etc. on the left and right hand side, alongside a flat plate at the beginning of the tank or the front of the tank. And so when you do kind of try and angle in this vehicle, you can get penned in those kind of left and right hand sides, much like you would see with things like the IS-3, except you've got a flat plate in the middle of it with those 2 smaller kind of flaps on the side that can be penned. So you can see me here, we're able to put one round into this guy quite easily, just pre-aim in the corner. This is a typical heavy tank corner. Most people get this corner wrong when they are playing heavy tanks, and that is because they sit there and they essentially kind of poke all the way around the corner, which is not a good idea. I would not recommend it. Now, the VZ actually hits us in the turret here, which is why he was able to pen us, which kind of sucks. And of course, now that we know that he knows the weak point of the IS, we are now able to get a few shots into him. But of course, it is difficult to hit them every single time. You can see that there is a little bit of a scar on the top of the tank, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it, but a battle-worn mark, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. But either way, we've done a fair bit of damage, but there's not a lot of team support, and with the T42, who could focus us at any point, we want to make sure that we hit this guy. Yes, thank you Wargaming for completely missing where we just went to try and aim at that guy. But luckily, what we can do here is get hold down behind the rock, make it much more difficult for this guy to hit us, and there you go, we bounce the round as well as hit him for a bit of damage. But he is now in a position that is kind of boring for us because we can't really play on the corner until this guy goes out of the game. So we're just going to kind of pre-aim this guy. Hopefully we can hit. Of course we don't. The accuracy, like I said, does play a part, but it does usually work quite well. It's only when you get kind of slimmer shots like this that it can play up, but most of the time it's fine. Like maybe we just got a little bit unlucky with where our shots were going. But here you go, we spot the STA-1. Of course there is that VZ somewhere in this game, maybe potentially still there, maybe he's got taken out, we're not entirely sure at this point. So by staying where we are right now, it gives us that opportunity to kind of have a little bit of team support from the TD and of course the heavy tank that's nearby me. And if we were on the corner, they could come all the way around. It would make it a little bit more annoying for the teammates to actually hit these guys, and we might lose hit points and they might YOLO us, which we don't want to happen. If we can limit how much YOLO goes on in this game, we can often do a lot better than you might think. So with the Caliban here, that is not a tank you want to be taking hits from. So we managed to avoid taking a hit directly and penning, but of course with a HE sort of tank that is, it can yeah, steal quite a bit of your hit points regardless. The STA-1 hits us here, I believe, or maybe the T43, but either way, not looking very good on the hit point pool. But there are tanks now coming behind us, but this is where we've got to really start conserving our hit points in this game to make it work. We need to use this heavy tank as kind of a bit of a support role that's behind us. Now there's an Emil 1951 that is pushing from behind. Now we know that this tank is a 3-shot autoloader. It is pretty devastating when it does hit you, and of course we expose too much of our hull armor, and I'm starting to think oh gosh, this is going to be a fat loss and we're going to end up getting removed quite quickly, but hopefully we can remove this guy. We high roll on the damage here to take him out for 451, and now the STA1, who thinks he's very good at the game, is going to come around and try and take us out, but I don't think he realizes that we haven't got a terrible reload, and so now he realizes he may have messed this one up and isn't aiming properly. He's too busy reversing and trying to maneuver his tank, which we can pick up on in the third person view. And there you go, he's out of the game pretty quickly, and you can do that in your own games. Obviously when you're on 86 hit points, where he could take you out is yeah, one of those things where you have to be quite careful, but in that case we need to get rid of him, and we did, so yeah, not a problem there. If we got taken out, it's whatever. We helped the flank out as much as possible, but luckily we do survive, and now we can try and help out the rest of the team with the enemies that are kind of pushing up, like the Centurion, for example. We're waiting to see whereabouts we can hit him. We're not just going to go for a YOLO shot here. He, of course, gives us more of his tank that we can see, and you get extra bit of damage and increase the chances of you actually being able to hit the guy, which is something a lot of people don't do. They kind of don't think about, well, maybe he'll actually expose more of his tank if they wait a little bit longer, and then we can hit him, then we can guarantee a pen, etc. So yeah, luckily we did that, and we end up with more damage. So now we try and get one into the side of the target. Slim shot, if we hit, it's good. If we don't, it's not a problem. We do miss, so that's fine, but I'm not expecting it to hit. It's more of one of those things that if it does, brilliant, good job. And then we go for the Tiger 1 here. Bit of a bad aim for me. Yeah, I mean, I should have tracked the Tiger 1's movement a little bit better, and we would have hit that one pretty much guaranteed. But now he is behind the ridge, which is not good for us, but whatever. He might even poke around in a second. He is deciding to go, and then of course the Primo Victoria takes that one away from us, and we don't get any more damage, but it's fine. The Hydra IS-6 has that mobility that isn't terrible. We'll wait to get unspotted before we push out, because you never know, someone might be pre-aiming, and we get spotted here. It is the T43 from earlier who is in the middle, and yeah, this could be a bit bad, but obviously Tiger 1 just checking if he's actually able to hit us here. He isn't. Fine. Type well, the T43 is able to hit us there, but because we're on top of the ridge, he's kind of shooting up into our upper plate, which I mean is just basically an auto ricochet. He's not going to be able to hit us. Now what we don't do here is push down, because that will give him an opportunity to hit our upper plate. Makes it harder for him to do that, and we're just going to wait and hope that he can kind of make a misplay here and pull all the way around, which he does, and we shut him down for an extra bit of damage. So that's kind of how the IS-6 works. I feel like this game showed you the kind of things that do happen. You do get penned with this vehicle, as you can see, but you can also deal a lot of damage. You can really punish people with that 440 alpha, pick up 4,129 damage with 321 assists, 249,000 silver in this game, which is amazing. Really nice to have that, and yeah, not a bad one for earning a bit of silver in World War II, with a ×2 silver boost for complete transparency and firing nothing but premium ammunition when we played this. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea as to how much silver you can actually earn with these vehicles, and I highly recommend saving up your silver bonuses to be able to use them with the Crimson tanks if you have any of them, or if you want to check out the other Crimson tank, which is the Ragnarok, which will be coming out or has come out yesterday, and if you want to see the Minotaur, which is coming out tomorrow as of the recording of this vehicle or video, then you're going to be able to see that as well. So we'll cover the full bundle, and hopefully you can make your choice as to whether you think it's worth actually picking up these tanks. In my opinion, absolutely. If you don't have one of them, it's a great way to earn silver in kind of World War II mode if you don't want to play Cold War. And all of these tanks are super competitive, really good tanks as well, so you can't go wrong when you decide to pick up the Hydra IS-6, the Ragnarok, or the Minotaur. All are really fun tanks. The Minotaur KV5, the tier 8 Crimson vehicle, the final one for today's video, and yeah, this is of course part of the Minotaur and Crimson tank kind of videos that we've been doing, covering the entire bundle that was available for World War II as part of the Crimson collection. So without further ado, let's get into the final installment. We've seen the other two, and you've probably already watched them maybe, and the Minotaur KV5 is the final one, but the Minotaur KV5 is a little bit different to its Hydra, which is the other Soviet tier 8 heavy tank, and that is because this is a buffed version of the standard KV5. And so, yeah, this should be pretty interesting to see how this one plays in game. And we've got an interesting replay where you can see both the armor, the damage, and yeah, how this tank can also be a little bit annoying to play at the same time. But what is the Minotaur KV5? Well, it's all about having the thick armor, the speed for a gigantic tank, the kind of damage per minute that the tank gets, as well as also having the hit points to tank quite a few of your hits and really drive a wedge through a lot of the opponents. And it also gets rid of some of the negatives of playing the standard KV5, and as such, let's have a look at both of them, because at least then we get a good indication as to what each of the variants of the KV5 are about. And so we're going to stick with the Goronich. This is the skinned version of the standard KV5. What's different? Well, the Goronich is, of course, the standard KV5. This one only plays up to tier 9. This is a preferential matchmaking vehicle, whereas the Minotaur is, like the Hydra IS-6, a playing up to tier 10, so it no longer has preferential matchmaking compared to the standard KV5. So in order to compete with tier 10s, what Wargaming did was buff the Minotaur KV5, meaning that when you get into a game up against, for example, a Goronich, you are just better, and that is because you have increased penetration. You got 227 versus the KV5's 175, and that's on the standard rounds. And in fact, your standard penetration on the Minotaur is better than the premium penetration of the KV5, so there's a good start. And then, of course, you get increased alpha damage, because why wouldn't you? And that means that you got 320 versus the 300 on the standard KV5. So you're dealing more damage, having higher penetration so you can deal with tanks, and of course having ridiculously high penetration on the premium rounds, 289 pen, meaning that basically everything you meet can be penned with the KV5. So yeah, this one is not to be messed around with, and it can certainly deal a lot of damage, but there are some weak points to this vehicle, which are those gigantic droids, and you might be thinking, oh, are they the exact same? No, the Minotaur gets increased armor compared to the standard one, and that is because the droids get 200 mil versus the Goronich's droids getting, I believe, somewhere in the region, 170. So it gets buffed droids, which allow you to bounce more rounds. They are no longer kind of weaker. They are weaker, but they are no longer just as easy of a pen as most people would take the standard KV5, so you can often bounce off of them if you don't aim properly, or maybe you get unlucky with RNG, rounds can bounce off of them. So yeah, there is still the cupola on the top of the tank which can be penned. Those droids are a weak point and you can pen them with most vehicles. If you aim properly, the lower plate is also a weak point, although it is fairly strong. But either way, the armor works pretty well, and in fact reverse side scraping with the KV5 is actually better than actually going frontally with the KV5, and that's because you can hide the droids. So essentially all that the enemies will see is, if you remove the back of the tank, they just see the side from this sort of direction as you come around the corner. You can also hide the cupola on the left hand side if you're angling out from like a right side or from your left, if that makes sense. And so yeah, you can often hide the cupola depending on how you're what corner you're actually taking. But the Minotaur KV5 doesn't just do that. Its penetration and damage per minute allow you to deal quite a lot of damage pretty quickly. You're reloading in 9 seconds, and that's how, with all of the kind of bonuses that we've picked in this tank. That's not even with advanced loader. And the reason why we did that is because we ran a ramming build in this tank. Now, if you wanted to min-max the vehicle, I would suggest taking off spool liner and placing in advanced loader, and then maintaining everything else. The extra speed that the traction system does allows you to turn quicker and increases your top speed, and it's not necessary in this tank, but it certainly is useful. The consumables, we've gone with full premium consumables, and we've dropped the med kit to have fuel, and that's just for increased speed. In terms of the best performing one, obviously take a med kit if you can, but if you do want to kind of play the the YOLO meta where you just go in and have a bit of fun, then fuel can be really, really good, except, you know, when you do get your driver knocked out, it can just end up being terrible. And of course the loader or the gunner, but you just got to hope that your crew members don't get knocked out. But you got about 1 million of them in this tank, so you do get them taken out quite often. But the whole point is that I was just trying to have a bit of fun going into ram, hence the ramming or spool liner kind of equipment piece that we've got. Either way, with that being said, of course we've got full premium in this tank. I would definitely recommend taking some HE, so in the future I would take 5. That's just for if you meet any of the kind of lightly armoured vehicles, French light tanks, you know, all of the British light tanks, that sort of thing. It's nice to have the HE, and of course the HE damage is actually significantly better. You go from 320 to 420, which is big, and the penetration isn't awful. 62 can pen quite a few of those light tanks, so it is useful in having that, and I would definitely recommend. As far as standard rounds, definitely take some. I would definitely take about maybe 15 to 20 if I was going to play this thing, and that's just primarily because you need a lot of premium rounds for those tier 10 games, because although 227 isn't awful, it is a little bit annoying when you're playing up against super heavies, things like the VK1001P, the Maushan, the Maus, the Type 4 Heavy, the Type 5 Heavy, all of those sorts of tanks. 227 just won't pen reliably, so yeah, in those sorts of situations where you are fighting up against other heavies that are higher tier or super heavies at the same tier, premium rounds really, really nice to have, and it just means that you just basically don't bounce. And the good thing about them is they are just better because they have increased penetration and increased shell velocity because they're APCR, which is amazing. So that's kind of how I run this tank, how I would kit it out for the various different situations, whether you're ramming or whether you're going for the overall just domination. And of course, much like the other tanks, this gets a 75% silver bonus. It gets 7 degrees of gun depression, which is amazing. Accuracy is also amazing, 0.28. You've got 2.12 second aim time with the commander that we've got set up. I'll show you what that is. Of course, the horsepower to weight ratio is not the best, 12. Of course, this can go up essentially if you're taking the other kind of speed boost equipment that is advanced powertrain, but you know, I just wanted the top speed, and of course the turning speed, because this vehicle does not turn particularly fast, 19.8 degrees a second, so it takes you almost 20 seconds to fully rotate this tank, and that's not including the turret, so that's just to turn the hull. Of course, when you include the turret, it becomes significantly better, but still takes a long time, about 9 seconds. So yeah, with all of that being said, let's see what this tank actually plays like in game by showing off one of the kind of all-round replays that I've got in this thing. We had higher damage games, we've showcased it on the channel before, so you can find that if you're interested in seeing more of it, but this replay really does sum up the Minotaur KV5. And so the replay in question is on Vineyards, and Vineyards is a map that is pretty decent for the most part. You have a lot of different things that you can do on the map, there's plenty of different positions you can go to, but with how we've got this tank, I am primarily focusing on the southern side of the map. I don't usually go over here, which is something that I've been trying to do just to try and test myself in different situations, different places, but we're going to make our way over here, that primarily so we can try out the different spots and see if we can make it work. Now, we do make a few mistakes in this game. Obviously, when you try out something new, it doesn't always go particularly amazing, and there's definitely things I would have changed about how we played this game. Not necessarily about how we played in the southwest corner, but what we did from there. But either way, what we do here, we've got 1780 hit points, which we want to use effectively. We don't want to take any early game damage, but we also want to get forward quickly enough such that we're not going to lose out on damage by being at the back. And you do not want to snipe in something like a Minotaur, because the whole point about it is that you need to be up close and personal and just dominating people. That's what it's all about, literally getting up close and just basically hugging them to their sleep, if you know what I mean. And you can see here the Scorpion G obviously coming over, trying to deal with us, and unfortunately for him, he gets hit by us on the move. That's because the dispersion of this tank is insanely good. It does not bloom out. The accuracy on the move is amazing. and when you're fighting tanks like the Scorpion G, you really can push them quite easily. And so already we're up to 610 damage, and we've basically not stopped the entire game. But we are going to stop, and the first tank that we're going to stop for is the T32, who we put one into the track of. The enemy artillery is already loving me right now, and that will continue throughout this game. So yeah, it's always fun when that happens. But another one into the T32 there. We bounce a few. We're up to 725 block. This tank armor definitely works, and that is the fantastic thing. The standard KV5, it doesn't necessarily work, and that's because the cupolas on the and the droids, they are just worse. They do get penned by a lot of tanks, whereas this one, when you're in a top tier matchup, it feels amazing. They really struggle to deal with you. The only tank that's actually really done any damage to us happens to be the only tank that really does damage to anyone, which is artillery. So yeah, with that being said, we are getting hit from the side, and they're all bouncing because, you know, playing a super kind of heavy vehicle, we can kind of bounce quite a few rounds, and you can kind of play that in a tier 8 matchup. You want to be getting forward, you want to be doing stuff like that, and so far we've picked up 1400 damage whilst blocking nearly 2000, which is more than the hit points of the tank. But we do need to stay quite far away. We don't want to get hit by people in the spawn, which is why I'm going all the way over here when we cross down to try and go into the dip. And hopefully we don't get spotted or hit. And we do. We get tracked, but it's fine. People just bounce and bounce and bounce, and it's basically the experience of playing the Minotaur. So yeah, even when you're side on, the armor's pretty strong. So yeah, especially up against like tier 6 vehicles. Now, with that being said, we are now relying on other people to try and spot for us. The view range of this vehicle is god-awful, especially when you're trying to push against tier kind of 8 tank destroyers who are camping in the bushes, tier 7 tank destroyers, basically anything that has any amount of camo and view range. This tank will get spotted. It's gigantic. I mean, it's no surprise, I don't think, that you're getting spotted by, you know, the campers in the base. So either way, we're going to push up now. And this is probably the mistake I made. I push up a bit too far. I'm thinking, you know what, screw it. I'm going. I am moving forward. I cannot be bothered. And realistically, I'm the one that's usually farming people who do this exact same strat. But we're trying to angle for the opponents here, allowing us to get into this position here with only taking one shot. But this is where the kind of gameplay breaks down. Now, we get a lot of damage, but it kind of breaks down because we can't really do anything. We have to reverse away if we want to kind of avoid getting hit. But you can see here we're just dealing a bit of damage, pushing back in, avoiding any potential damage that is coming in by using the rock in between us. Artillery isn't in this game. People could probably see my cupola over the top of this rock if they are up above me, which can definitely happen. You do get penned sometimes, but the problem is we're gigantic, and the view range, as I say, is not amazing, and of course the camo is not amazing either. And when you're trying to bait TDs that you know have penetration to pen you, it can be a bit rough. But so far we've made it work to a degree. But we get spotted here, which makes me think there's someone over to the right, since we got spotted in a location that we didn't get spotted before. It either means that someone's over to the right or someone's over to the left. The high likelihood is that they're probably over to the left. Now, with that being said, we've spotted about 4 or 5 tanks that were over here when we started coming over. We're getting shot by about 1 million of them. So I'm kind of hoping that our team will dispose of the heavy tank that's pushing our base and then come and support me, because that would be really nice. We can definitely weather the storm so far. But of course, as we're poking, we do get penned. Our shell goes flying over. Trying to go for blind fires, just basically see if we can spot anyone. And that's the main problem. But we find ourselves a Guardian who we do manage to snap, which is amazing. And with the Guardian that's now pushing up, we've got to get rid of him if we have any chance of being able to win this game. But the problem is when we're actually kind of moving towards him, we do get spotted from the left, and of course it's difficult to outspot people. We've got a charioteer who's out in the open who we get one shot into, and we're hoping that he bounces his next one or maybe avoids actually being able to hit us. He's shooting at us angled, and now the Guardian does come from behind, obviously not aiming. The KV5's armor on the back end of the tank, on the rear of the tank, is actually pretty strong. I think you have about 90 millimeters or something like that. So it's really, really strong from the back. So you don't want to just auto aim the back of it. It can bounce, very much so. But what you're seeing me do here, we've blocked 6.2 thousand damage, and we find ourselves a Stura Emil, who is, of course, going back into the location that he was last spotted. That's why you don't poke in the same spot that you actually got spotted. Otherwise, people with actual brains will shoot you. So yeah, don't go back to the same position that you did. Now the charioteer comes along. I try and go for the track and damage, but unfortunately we only damage the track, which means the charioteer is free to come around, and he puts one into the side of us, ending our game. But luckily we have a Caro in the base camping. Brilliant. Let's hope we win this game. I'll catch you when we may or may not in this game. Now then, the game ended up with us winning, but not because any of the teammates that were left actually ended up winning the game. It's because we dealt more damage than the enemy team. And that is, you know, sometimes it happens. The Caro basically camped in base all game and then sat behind a building for the last like 4 minutes. So unfortunately, we didn't get the true win, but we kind of won by cheesing it, and the whole battle lasted 15 minutes, which is just long as hell. But we picked up 3.6 thousand damage, blocking 6.2 thousand damage in the game, and really getting quite lucky. This is what the Minotaur offers, and this was not particularly the most amazing game that you're going to see in the Minotaur, and certainly not my best game that I've ever had. It just shows you loads of different things that I feel like are very good about the tank, what's bad about the tank, the size of it, the weak points, and the fact that, you know, if you don't get team support in a tank like this, you can really suffer quite badly, and you do get stuck out on a limb with the view range sometimes, which is exactly what you saw. And you definitely don't want to push from where we were into the position that we ended up in, because yeah, that doesn't usually work out well, and I'm usually the one that's farming the people that do it. So yeah, be careful and don't fall victim to your own positions that you use in the game. Either way, hopefully that concludes our kind of series on the Crimson vehicles, covering all 3 of the tanks, the Hydra IS-6, the Minotaur, and the Ragnarok. In terms of my favourite of the 3, I think it has to go to the Hydra IS-6. The Ragnarok is amazing, the Minotaur is really, really strong, very good, and of course the Hydra IS-6 just feels nice. The tank looks amazing. I just really enjoy playing the IS-6 that's actually got decent penetration for once, and so yeah, I think the Hydra IS-6 is my favourite, even if it isn't necessarily the most competitive, which probably goes to the Ragnarok, with the Minotaur kind of being there for the fun factor as well as being super competitive as well. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like it, and of course subscribe if you aren't already and you want to see some more. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.